Hi, everybody. I want to introduce Paul Schulick. He was the founder and formulator for New Chapter Vitamins, which was a huge, huge piece, as I mentioned last night in my stories, of my 12-year healing journey. And we recently connected on a panel together, and we have very similar synergy with our own journeys and understanding. Both of us have created our businesses from the heart, not as businesses per se. And so I wanted to bring him on. This is going to be the first part. We're going to do a 3-part series. He has an incredible new brand for the biome and 3 new products. So we're going to take each week and we're going to talk a little bit about the background of what's going on around behind each product. This week we're going to mostly on the stress response. We're going to talk a lot about what's in the supplements that are out there. And we're going to hear about Paul and how he sources his ingredients and how clean they are. I think it'll be really educational for a lot of you, so feel free to chime in. But I want to get started. Paul, I would love to hear you talk to us a little bit about, because I know this is something you and I both connect on. I'm a highly sensitive person, an empath, so on my journey, I was always reacting to everything, supplements, food, that no one else was, right? And so it was so hard for me to even find clean supplements, even in the top health food stores here in Manhattan or in my parents' home area in New Jersey. And as you mentioned to me yesterday, you were the same way. You were trying to take supplements, and the supplements were making you feel worse, which you ended up creating, New Chapter, and now for the biome. So can you talk to us a little bit about that? And I think what's really interesting is my audience would probably love to hear, you see an ascorbic acid vitamin C in or in a drugstore, but then there's also vitamin C in rose hips or in orange. So what's the difference? And there's so many, supplements out there these days. Can you talk to us a little bit about the difference there and what people should be looking at?
Sure. It's great. It's a real pleasure to be here with you, Amy. It reminded me when you were speaking, I all of a sudden flashed back to 1979 in my health food store in Lexington, Massachusetts. And I remember the first time a customer came in and asked me, what's the difference between this vitamin C that I have in my hand that I just went across the street to buy and the one that I'm buying in your health food store? And she showed me the bottle, and I looked at the bottle that I was selling called Vitamin C with Rose Hips. And I quickly realized they were essentially the same thing. The only difference was that the Vitamin C with Rose Hips that I was selling in my health food store had just a sprinkling of rose hips, but it was basically the same material that was being sold at the drugstore, the ascorbic acid. And I soon realized in 1979 that vitamin C is not really vitamin C. That when you think of vitamin C, you think, as most people would, oh, that's what you get when you drink orange juice or drink rose hips tea. But in reality, it's not. It's a purified chemical that's isolated and in some cases just chemically synthesized. And so your body, as a sensitive body, and my body back in 1979, I had a very sensitive body too. And when I was recommending this product to my customers, they were saying, you know what, Paul, I'm not really feeling any better from this rose hips vitamin C, because you know what, Amy? It wasn't really rose hips vitamin C. It was ascorbic acid blended with rose hips, a little bit of it. And you know what? It's the same thing like with the herbs. When you take an herb like chamomile, you think you're drinking chamomile tea, but in reality, when you do an analysis, and we do this all the time For the Biome, like I just got a lab report last week on chamomile tea, and it was determined by a very reputable lab that there were all these other species that were blended with it. So While on one hand, I'm a huge proponent of the health food industry, on the other hand, I have concerns that when we don't get the results that we think we're supposed to get, we think there's something wrong with the herb,
Right.
or something wrong, right? Or, or something wrong with the food. But in reality, it's just not, it's not the real thing. And so the rose hips or the chamomile, and so if you're drinking chamomile tea to promote a greater sense of calm or ease, but what if it's not really chamomile? And what if it's not the right dose of chamomile to produce the effect? Or the vitamin C, if you're taking it to prevent a cold, what if that's not like the vitamin C that you get when you drink a glass of orange juice or you eat an orange or whatever? So what most people like yourself and myself think that we're sensitive to something, you weren't made. Ascorbic acid, right? It doesn't grow on trees. Ascorbic acid is chemically synthesized. And if you're going to use an herb that's as precious and as amazing as chamomile is, you better be sure it's the real thing, especially if your quality of life or your stress response depends on it. And so that's what I've determined over my years in the business, is that the most expensive supplement is really the one either that doesn't work or that makes you feel worse.
Always, always.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, I hate to say this, but it was the same way with, Western medicine. I thought I was on Park Avenue going to the best hematologist. I had bone marrow issues. I was at the best hematologist in Medic, and I thought, and my parents thought, that was the best, and so we were listening to these people. But, it's funny. Someone once told me on my journey, I don't think I've mentioned this to my audience yet, but it's about time I do. They said to me, the person, and I don't want to put it, I know in terms of words, the person that will heal. I've realized I've gotten to the consciousness that no one can heal you, right? It's a
beautiful. Yes.
But they said to me, very generally, the person who will heal you is not writing a book, does not have a website, does not take cards, and is not interviewed in magazines. And at the time I was going to like the best doctors on Park Avenue, and I was like, get out of here. I know what I'm doing. And it turns out the people who have healed myself and my family and my clients, that's how it is. Not to say anybody writing a book has a website isn't doing it, but it's the people who have gone through a deep healing and who are actually understand, that interconnectedness and really want to help people. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's it. And it's that connectedness that it's one of my favorite expressions.
Yeah.
Where there is connection, there is no pain. Where there is pain, there is no connection. And it is in that connection that you feel with your closest friends. That's what puts you in a state of what we refer to as rest and digest. Mm-hmm. It's when you're not in a sense of connection, when you don't feel safe, that's when you go into a state of fight or flight. And that's what's been going on, especially over the past year. Because I read a study, a major journal, in Nature, an international journal of science, said a year ago, right before the pandemic, about, 11 or 12% of the US population was expressing symptoms of anxiety or depression. It was up to like 40%. And partly because we're not connected. We're not feeling that oneness or that closeness. And that's what's so critical for our sense of well-being.
Yeah,
right?
100%. And that whole interconnectedness, I mean, again, going back to the doctors when I was 24 years old, 14 years ago when I started this journey, they told me, your acne is because of this, the, rosacea is because of that, your asthma is because of this. And, and after speaking with you so deeply about all this, it's like all of this is connected. And anybody on a healing journey, when you start to realize, somebody's telling you and intuitively, you're like, I know this, it was funny. My mother, I don't know if she knew a woman or she was talking with someone, and they kept saying she knew her knee pain was connected to her breast cancer. And the doctors were like, give me a
Wow,
break.
beautiful. Yeah,
And they just, tons of shame, of course, which we all get with the world.
yes,
But there's not that, like, she knew. And it's always like your body knows there's this interconnectedness. And so I'd love to have you share, like an example, like what we spoke about in terms of how asthma is connected to the mind and how that's connected
yes,
to that, right? How the mind, body, and the microbiome are connected.
yes. So when I have the thought that, like right now, when I'm looking at you, I feel connected. I feel like we understand each other. And so if you were to take a measurement of my bloodstream, and you would see if the system was sensitive enough, you would see these things called cytokines, your inflammatory markers. You would see those markers reflect a cooling. When we get anxious or we feel separated, what happens is our inflammation markers go up because our body is preparing for a fight or a flight. When we feel connected like I do now, when I feel like there's that I'm safe or that I'm peaceful, my mind tells my body it's okay. Amie is safe. Then what happens is, and we all know this, we go through it many, many times every day. Then my body sends out these cytokines, and it happens instantly in my gut. I feel in my gut, just like I feel it on my skin. You say he or she made my skin crawl. Well, you can also have the experience that someone makes you feel all warm and soothed all over. And in your gut, which is recognized now widely as your second brain, it's producing all of these neurochemicals like serotonin and dopamine and the microbiome that are more prevalent in cells than human cells. They get this message, everything is okay. And so they start producing compounds like that you've heard of called oxytocin, the molecule of connection. And so what my goal has been over 40 years has been, the first products I made in 1982, Amie, were a prebiotic and a probiotic. We didn't call them back then those terms.
Yeah.
But that's, I knew because I myself had such significant gut issues that I knew I needed to correct what was going on in my gut before I could correct just about anything else except what was going on in my mind. So when I think of, like, for example, the most important thing we can do is to form our connections, our relationships, our close connections, our loved ones. That's more important than anything. Our meditations, our connections with nature, all that's really important or vital. And then when I think of something else that really uplifts just about everybody the moment they look at it or think of it, even you close your eyes and you think of flowers. The moment you close your eyes and you think of flowers or somebody giving you flowers, you're going to start to feel a sense of peace. That's the gift from nature. And everything in nature feels that blessing of a flower. So I had experiences over the years with flower essences and flower remedies. And I said to myself, well, if I were to take one remedy from nature and make it to match it with the science. And that's really important, Amie, because my dad was a doctor. And the most important thing that he would always challenge me on, he basically would say, prove it.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
That's my dad. I went on my first house calls with him when I was 4 years old. And so I can still hear him speaking, prove it. So for me, yeah, flowers, it's like common sense. But now what you need to do is prove, and the science is there. The science on saffron is there. The most exotic spice in nature, worth more than its weight in gold. Saffron. What does it do? It reduces high sensitivity C-reactive protein. It reduces one of the key markers of inflammation. So when you blend a flower, a stigma like saffron, and then you take the best chamomile that you can find in the world, and you give it at the right potency that's matched in science. You match these 2 flowers with 5 other flowers that are all shown in the science to contain constituents which not only support your emotional clarity or emotional strength and clarity of mind, but can also move the needle on your immune system. That to me was the home run, because I knew if I can cool down the fight or flight response, that ultimately I would have a beneficial effect on the immune system. And so we did a clinical study, and we showed that these 7 flowers combined together would promote clarity of mind. Thank you.
And there,
clarity of mind. But you know, see, the whole difference here is like there, if you hold up a bag there, Amie, for a second.
I mean, it smells so good. I don't know if this is allowed, but I said last night, I've been leaving the jar open in my kitchen because
that's right.
I'm like, I hope that doesn't do anything because it smells so incredible. I was showing everyone how gorgeous the flowers are in here and how delicate and beautiful they are.
And that's at least 4 times bigger than you'll get in a common so-called tea bag. That's why we call it an infusion bag or a sachet.
I love that.
Because what it's delivering, we measure the apigenin in our chamomile. Thank you. It really is. You're getting the senses. Your aromatherapy benefit is instant. And the moment it touches your mouth gets the experience that goes immediately through your vagus nerve and into your nervous system to relax, fight, flight, and freeze, and turns on rest and digest.
I mean,
and so that's the story.
Yeah, you can feel it right away. It's amazing. And I mean, my audience knows I am not someone, first of all, this is the first live interview I've ever done. And I don't think in over a few years promote supplements. And everyone's always asking me, what brands do you trust? I'm the kind of person that's like, everybody's different. So I'm so sensitive, and so is my audience. So when I tried this, that's why I was like, we have to get on here and I have to share this, because for so many reasons, but also because it's just so much easier than taking a pile of supplements for yourself.
Yes.
Yes. And as the audience will see in the next 3, sessions that we do, today we're more focused on like the mind-gut connection, but,
Yes.
Paul has introduced me to, which I did not even learn. I have a lot to learn from him on, in my journey. I never learned about the lung microbiome. The microbiome in your lungs, and especially with, I'm not going to use the keyword because I know it'll get flagged, but with the whole situation, pandemic going on, the virus, it's your lungs. And so Paul, having founded New Chapter and formulated all those products after he left, was like, wait a minute, now we're in this pandemic. How can I support other people with, the gut-lung connection, which I've never even heard of. So we'll be talking about that next Wednesday, so stay tuned. But today we're talking about this, and I know a lot of you have asked me about the vagus nerve too. So Paul, do you touch on that just for a little bit about stress response and fight or flight, because it's one of the biggest issues with my own healing journey. And I was doing everything right, taking the supplements, eating the organic food, going to acupuncture, but I was on social media. I was, going 100 miles an hour. And I also had a ton of emotional pain that I just pushed down because I'm tough, and I was like, I can handle it. But what's interesting, and both of us really connect with also, is the fact that it's not so much about stress is bad. It's about how can you, what's the adaptability to stress, right? Stress is just going to get it's going to get crazier and crazier unless you could take yourself off of, social media or different things. But can you talk a little bit about that adaptability of to stress and sort of that stress response, how to really work with it instead of being like, how do I get rid of my stress? Because, that's not really possible.
Thank you, Amy. I leaned over to pick up one of my favorite books written by Dr. Kelly McGonigal, and it's called The Upside of Stress. I think everything is going backwards on the screen,
That's
but
okay.
the book changed my life because it transformed. I started meditating in 1973, and I haven't missed a day of meditation in what is it, 48 years. I've meditated twice a day for 48 years. And to me, I've always known that through my mind and through how I view my life can make a huge difference on how I respond or react to stress. And so for me, the moment I started changing my attitude towards stress, it was transformative in terms of adaptation to stress. And then when I started integrating, like you talked about, the vagus nerve. So for me, I was also practicing yoga in 1973. The simple techniques that have been taught for thousands of years, besides the flowers that I'm talking about, like saffron and passion flower and elderflower, that are contained in stress therapy, simple techniques like pranayama, doing the reverse nostril breathing, right?
My parents this week, it's the
It's
best.
it's huge. It's like within 5 minutes, you start noticing a little cooling down. It's the same thing that flowers can deliver. And it's the same that the power of breath can be incredibly important. So that's why I say I made my living through supplements at New Chapter. And now what I'm doing by giving people the aromatic experience, you smell the saffron. It's like if you just close your eyes and smell that, you will be uplifted. That's just the way nature works. And so that's the clarity of mind. When your mind is clearer, one of my favorite stories from the teachers that I studied with was when it's dark in a room and you see a string on the floor, that you might think it's a snake. But in reality, as soon as you turn on the light, you can see, oh, it's just a string. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have really horrible and difficult periods of stress to go through. But I think just about everybody will agree, if our mind is well rested and we're clear, we have a clearer mind, and we feel emotionally together and connected, that's when what one day might have kept me up all night, the next day, I think I can reframe that and look at it in a different light. And that's that expression, look at it with a different light. That's really what flowers can do, exercise can do, breath work can do. That's all interconnected.
Yeah. You're so right. It's fascinating. And so, in terms of fight or flight, the interconnectedness, understanding, what supplements are really right for people at what dosage. I love what you've created here. So, do you want to, I know everybody's probably at work right now, so we'll cap it in a minute or two, and I want to share the product with them. But can you just give people an idea? I'm going to hold up the product. Paul is a very modest genius, as I like to call it, that has created this. But I really want to support the brand and show you, the product. Can you just talk for a minute or two or three about how you created the satchels and how you figured out, the quantity of what was needed for
Thank
people?
you. Thank you. Well, it would take longer than 3 minutes, but
Oh,
I'll give you a nutshell of it, the highlight. I was really amazed about 10 years ago, Amy, when I read a study on one of my favorite flowers, which was chamomile. And when you take the right dose of chamomile, which is about more than 3 typical tea bags of chamomile, and it has to have the right constituents in it, like apigenin and these compounds called polyphenols, at a dose of 5 grams, which is what's in that big sachet, plus 6 other flowers, at that serving size, that is what's going to have a modulating effect on your cortisol, and it's going to have a significant impact on a key marker of biodiversity in your gut called hipparate. And so when I saw that, I said, oh, that's the ultimate way in an instantaneous response to deliver chamomile. And what's amazing in the research, Amie, is the effect lasted for 2 weeks after a person stopped drinking the 5 grams. Then what I always do, and I did this in my past life with New Chapter, is what I always do is blend an herb that I have studied, like in traditional Chinese medicine. You blend it with other herbs that will accentuate, in this case, other flowers that will accentuate its activity. So we did a study on our chamomile, and then what happens when our chamomile is blended with the 6 other flowers, including saffron. And we found that the impact was what I always have loved to call 1 + 1 is greater than 2. That's what we know in science as synergy. And so that is the beauty of a formulation, is that you're able to blend, in this case, flowers at the right dose, at the right potency, with the right constituents, and then you'll be able to bring out the most desirable effect. And then you must, as my dad would always say, prove it. And so we did. We proved it.
It's amazing. Paul, the smell, or this, I should say scent, because it isn't even a smell. This is just, it's incredible. So I'm just going to scroll through, but I do have a question. How often do you recommend to drink the tea? Daily or how often? And if you do want to mention, I know you talked about the steeping of it. I think it's really fascinating to tell people if they steep it in 10 minutes, the effects you've found in studies, the effects on the immune system. That would be great.
Thank you, Amie. So I drink this every day. Much like I have broccoli every day and I have kale every day, I drink these 7 herbs every day. So they're a major part of my life. And then as far as what was the second question? I'm sorry. Besides,
like steeping it. How long?
Oh yes, thank you.
10 minutes.
So we did a study and we confirmed that the maximum effect occurs around 10 minutes. So you steep it for between 5 and 10 minutes, and that will bring you the greatest benefit. Longer steeping in this case will not make it any better.
It's amazing. And for those of you who are wondering what it looks like, how to do it, I actually put together a whole how-to last night up on my Instagram stories, how to make it, how to steep it. It looks absolutely beautiful. The flowers come alive. I mean, it's really, it's an experience, and it uplifts you. If there's anything that I can share from my own journey, the mind-body connection is just so, it's different than just taking a handful of supplements, which always makes me feel, or made me feel sick. And it was a mind game. I had to stop supplements for so long because it kept me as like that identity of, I mean, going through illness, your whole identity is, illness, or whether you have a thyroid condition, whatever. But when you're having like an experience, I did the video to show my audience last night, and I do it every night, soothing, and it feels really great. And it's all about the nervous system and the gut and the immune system, which is what we're all about right now. So I'm going to just share with people what it looks like. I put a link last night to the Amazon. I know a lot of people like to buy on Amazon, so I put a link to it up on Amazon. It's also up on the supplements page on our website, but I am going to show you. So it comes in a gorgeous, it's not plastic, it's glass. It comes in a beautiful, it's really gorgeous glass jar. This is now my healthy potpourri in my home. I keep it open. And then they also have right here is the refill. So I just opened this last night, to refill my container because I was running low. Oh my gosh, and this smells even better because there's more in here. So you can see this is the refill. So you just refill the beautiful glass container, so you never have to throw this out. And this is really beautiful, Paul. Really.
Well, we have a great team that has made just beautiful. They brought it. The outside looks as good as what's inside.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's incredible. So, okay, so any other questions? We're going to sign off, but any other questions, you can always leave them on my direct messages or over at For the Biome, and we'll get back to you. The product is on the For the Biome website, so you can click on their profile, give them a follow along, or it's also on Amazon. And again, any questions that any of you have, please feel free to leave them in my direct messages and I can pass them along. We're going to be doing 2 calls with Paul next Wednesday at 3. We're going to talk about the lung gut connection, if the lung microbiome, gut microbiome, which I just find so fascinating, especially because what we just went through with the pandemic, with the whole breathing lung situation, definitely something you don't want to miss. And then the following week, we're going to get into the last product that Paul has. So all 3 sessions are going to be saved up in our IGTV, so you can watch these as many times as you want. They'll never go away. And Paul, I want to thank you. You are
Thank you, Amie. Thank you.
Fresh air, and you just speak.
A real honor.
It's
an honor to be with you.
It's just so lovely to meet and connect with someone who really cares about people and is creating beautiful product, and doesn't feel like it's just another, supplement on the shelf. So thank you so much. And I hope that, my audience has learned a lot, and there will be a lot more in the next 2 weeks. So is there anything you end with or mention before we hang up?
I'm just really profoundly grateful for the work that you're doing that's shedding light to all these people, Amie. Thank you so much. You're a real light to the world, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun, and then I get to hang out with you. All right, everybody, have a great Wednesday night, and Paul and I will see you right back here next Wednesday at 3.
I can't wait. Thank you, Amie.
Okay, bye.